Hurricane Irma is no longer an if, but a when in terms of contact with Florida and the Keys?
It certainly looks that way, that we're pretty confident now that Irma is going to move in over some portion of the Florida Keys or the Florida Peninsula, and it's certainly going to bring direct hurricane impacts to a large part of the whole state of Florida in terms of the high winds, storm surge, and rainfall.
And then what? All right, so if that's the reality, that you're going to see hurricane-type conditions, whether the eye goes over or not, it doesn't have to be a direct hit to be a bad hit. What are you seeing in terms of realities now about levels of expectation as you move through this state? Because we just heard Governor Scott saying, you know, all Floridians should be ready to evacuate. That's more than we've heard before. And he says that the risk goes from South Beach to Jacksonville at the northern end of the state. Why so?
Well, because the track that it looks like Irma is going to take it, up most of the peninsula. So you're going to end up with hurricane conditions on the west coast and on the east coast and near the core if it does go up the peninsula. There's also a significant risk of storm surge. That's what really drives the evacuation decision making in a state or in a locality. And so anybody who's at risk of storm surge, if they've been asked to evacuate, they should. The areas here that we have highlighted in dark pink are under a storm surge warning. There's a storm surge watch up in east central Florida. These are areas that are at risk of life-threatening inundation from storm surge from Irma that could be 5 to 10 feet or even 6 to 12 feet above ground level here in areas of southwest Florida. So that's really a life-threatening hazard.
What are you looking at in terms of duration of exposure in different areas? I mean, one of the calculations is how long until the first responders can get out and help people, because 911, is just not the lifeline that it can be during the actual storm. So can you measure that? Like how long you'll have to put up with Irma, let's say in South Beach?
Well, what we can look at here is, oops, lost my screen here. What we can look at here is we can look at when the winds are most likely to start, and that's a really key important point because people need to get ready at a certain time. And in South Florida here, for example, it looks like Saturday during the day or into the evening is going to be that critical time to get ready. It looks like we'd be dealing with tropical storm conditions at least all the way through Sunday and into Sunday night, perhaps Monday, with the hurricane conditions in the middle of that time period.
All right, Michael Brennan, I appreciate it. I know that you have to crunch all the numbers and put in the science just to get close on these, but the closer that the storm gets, the more accurate that all the predictions become. We'll check with you. Thank you very much, and we appreciate the information. So, what have we seen with Irma so far? We saw what it did coming through the Caribbean. This is a deadly storm. You have at least a couple of dozen lives that have been stolen by this storm through the British Virgin Islands, through the Caribbean. Now it's coming over Cuba, doing damage. They had to evacuate the whole northern shoreline of tourists there. We'll still learn what the devastation is that the storm brought to bear. So you would think that people in the Florida Keys, seeing what's coming their way across Puerto Rico, now Cuba, now towards them, that they would have taken flight first. Not the case. Bill Weir is in Key Largo. That's the key closest to the peninsula of Florida. Bill, what's the reality you're seeing there to this minute?
Actually, Chris, minor correction. We were in Key Largo this morning, but we came all the way down. Welcome to Key West. Welcome to the southernmost city of the United States. Welcome to the corner of Green and Duval Streets, which on an average Friday would be elbow to elbow with revelry, with tourists, with people catching beads and swilling boat drinks. But now we have just an occasional a bar back going to work. So see, that's the thing about the Florida Keys. You're never going to have a full mandatory evacuation in a place like this because it goes against the psyche of the people who come down and make their living in this place. There's a certain stubbornness, a certain sense of fierce individualism, but that doesn't mean they're not afraid. By this point, most of the people who wanted to leave have gone. That's about 2/3 of the 75,000 who call the Keys home. But we met a couple people with varying degrees of angst. Take a look.
Yeah, we hunkered down and we're staying. There's a lot of people that are staying.
Yeah?
Just mostly the tourists left.
Right.
I know a lot of locals are staying.
And what is it about a true native conch that makes you defy all those warnings and orders and makes you think you can survive something like this?
We've been through plenty of hurricanes. I know this one's a little bit bigger, but I'm sure we'll be all right.
I'm feeling confident about where I'm staying, and I'm just more worried, I think, the aftermath at this point. I grew up in the Chesapeake Bay and seen what some of the storms did up there, and even nor'easters. So, and we're down here. I think we would be kind of the last to get supplies over Miami, Fort Lauderdale, and the bigger cities.
She did express real worry, and this is somebody who's lived down here for quite a while. Most people refer back to Wilma 2005, which was the last time the storm surge inundated about 75% of Key West. They're worried about the storm surge. They're worried about a bridge going out because that not only cuts off transportation and supplies from the mainland, but their water and electricity as well. We understand there is a meeting of city council folks tonight. They'll get the very latest update. But if you listen to the locals here who've been studying the sea and the sky all their lives, the consensus here seems to be on the Coconut Telegraph that it'll come ashore at Marathon. Some of our meteorologists have been saying the same a little further north from here. And most have said they're hunkering down. It's too late to leave at this point because by the time they go 2 hours to Miami, then there's all the traffic on I-95 going north. But this place has no shortage of characters, and we'll introduce you to several of them in the coming hours. Chris?
Well, Bill, first of all, thank you for making that effort to go all the way down even further, deeper into the danger zone. And, you know, you call them conchs as a nickname. And, you know, it makes me think, in Italian, the word for conch is scungili, and it's used as a word to kind of describe somebody who's a little not right in the head, who sometimes makes decisions that aren't 100%. And I have to tell you, if you talk to the experts, they say staying where you are right now, you know, may make you a little bit of a scungili in terms of thinking about risk assessment.
Absolutely. No, I mean, from the outside, it makes utter no sense at all, especially when I talk to the guys who are going to ride it out on their boats. Now, even some long-timers say that's suicide. The guys we met last night who are going to ride it out on boats are suicide. But yeah, but when they do the math in their heads, they say, well, the building codes in the Keys are much stronger than, say, Tampa. So I'd rather ride it out in a structure that's rated for Cat 4 than a structure that's rated for a Cat 2. There's all these interesting bits of calculus that they're doing, whether to stay or go. But that is the reality. That's the psyche of the conchs, as you describe it. This is the conch republic, and they fly that flag proudly.
All right, I hear you. I get it. I mean, we all respect the spirit, but the choices, certainly the first responders aren't respecting them. Not that much, not that deep down, that close to where the storm is expected to come. Bill Weir, you stay safe, my friend. We'll check back with you in a little bit.
Thank you.
All right, so now where Bill is, I mean, they just have a lot, they're checking a lot of boxes of risk factors down there, okay? Now you get here to South Beach, and it becomes a very different dynamic. You have a much more dense population, and you have mandatory and then voluntary evacuation orders, and it's hard to keep track of everything. So let's go to West Palm Beach. Let's go to Brian Todd. He has been monitoring the police actions, almost, Brian, going door to door to see who got out, who decided to stay, and what is their condition.
That's right, Chris. The police were here just moments ago on South Flagler Drive here in West Palm Beach, putting it in incredibly plain and stark terms on their loudspeaker, saying this is a mandatory evacuation. Please evacuate, doing it very loudly on the loudspeakers so that everybody could hear it. Some people came out of their homes and talked to the police, but you would be surprised, Chris, how many people are going to ride this out. And one of the reasons that this area now is under mandatory evacuation is storm surge. Our people are telling us this could get 5 to 10 feet above normal water levels of storm surge. Right now, if you see down here the Intercoastal Waterway, this is low tide. We're about maybe 8 feet above the water, but at high tide, we're only going to be about 5 feet above the water, and then 5 to 10 feet more with wave activity. It's going to inundate this area. That's why they're trying to get Palm Beach over to your right, my left, evacuated right now, and they're trying to get people across these bridges. We are told that in West Palm Beach, some distance from here, there are some poor neighborhoods that are being evacuated, tens of thousands of people getting on buses to go to shelters on high ground. That's good news. But a lot of people here on the street have decided, Chris, to ride it out, and they think they're confident in the structure of their houses, and they just believe that, you know, they've been through this before and they can ride it out. That is not the advice that they're getting. And it leads to another question, Chris. Is the city going to be able to spend the resources? Are they going to want to spend the resources to rescue these people when there might be other people in more dire need who are trying to get out but maybe couldn't? you know, those are some tough decisions in the couple of days ahead.
You know, Brian, and you put your finger on the exact issue that we keep hearing from all of the officials. It's not that they're just making a decision to stay that is a decision for them. It's going to impact the first responders as well. Our thanks to Brian Todd. We'll check back with him in just